tell the people a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Well, many know me as Fleur Brun or Delgadas. I've been on YouTube for since about over 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm from the sector, the UFO sector, the supernatural sector.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally from Mount Vernon, but as you know, I speak French. French is my first language. My parents are from Martinique and St. Lucia. So big up to the island crew by way of South America.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. I've been part of the UFO kind of metaphysical sector for a long time. I was under the tutelage of the late Dr. Blair. So many people know me from that group. I was a lecture head. So a lot of me know me as the geek from Mount Vernon, taking a train over to Harlem to do the lectures of like the greats as Bobby Hemmett, Dr. Delbert Blair, Phil Valentine, and Ali. I mean, so many wonderful elders who have literally assisted with my growth and my evolution. So I'm so grateful for them. And I've been on YouTube for a long time speaking about many different topics, as you well know.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the videos I've seen of yours, you definitely remind me of Delbert Blair and the information he disseminated. I have to ask you, in terms of UFOs, extraterrestrials, and a lot of the things you say, where do you get your information from? Is it channel? Do you have visitations? Is it book form? Is it like where do you get your information?
Yeah.
Because you say a lot of very interesting things.
Well, I'm a contactee, and I've
Contactee,
spoken
okay.
about a contactee.
Okay.
Rather than saying that I'm a abductee, which was probably the term that was used for many years in the UFO sector,
Mhm.
my liaison with what you consider to be the galactics is very positive, very inspirational. A lot of the information that I've gained is just through being in contact, and I'm not one who channels. Everything comes kind of tangible. I'm a Sagittarius, so it has to come like face to face or more in a way that I can pick up or have a conversation with those who are so called from the other side. Um, and because I've had contact. I've made a lot of friends, and I had a lot of liaisons with people from that sector. So a lot of the information that I've gained is through personal wisdom, person to person, and also from just being around some amazing, magnanimous people.
Indeed, indeed. So we live in some interesting times. It's 2023. A lot is going on. What are they telling you about what's happening right now?
Well, I think this is it's weird because years ago,
Mhm.
when I was talking about it, it seemed so far fetched, and people were like,
Yeah.
well, you're fear mongering. This can't happen. Well, just basically, it's a shift, it's a
Mm.
reset. It's
Mm.
some religious people call it the rapture,
Mm.
some call it the apocalypse.
Mm.
It is a cycle, a cylindrical cycle that we go through every couple of hundreds of years, depending on what you acknowledge.
Mhm.
And we go through this evolution as a soul group. I don't know that everybody's a soul. Some
Mm.
people are just here for expectation, or some people like to call them background people, empty seaters, or Sims,
Uh,
or
and
um,
what's the word? NPCs.
NPCs, which is my
NPCs.
favorite term. And
Yeah.
these are just basically holographic beings that kind of fill up the space while we're engaging in our evolution here on the holographic planet called Earth. I personally think this is an Earth. I think this is a hologram and like a copy of what was considered to be Earth.
So what was the original Earth if this is a copy of what was once considered to be Earth?
Tiamat. Many
Tiamat.
people recognize her name, Tiamat. And there are different worlds that are reminiscent of Earth with the same similar geographical terrain. And
Mm.
if you've been accustomed to knowing, my perspective is that we're living in a dome, like a snow globe, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And our weather is modified, controlled. Everything that we engage with, whether it's food or interaction or even the agendas that are ran, are purposefully done uh, during this cycle while we're interfacing with one another. And as we evolve and gain a certain amount of wisdom and consciousness, we evolve and perhaps have the ability to exodus outside of the dome, where there's multiple domes outside of ourselves, some people call them planets, but they're literally other worlds. And many of us genetically come from those other worlds.
Mhm.
That's
Do
why
you
there's so many different phenotypes in this particular, Earth, simulation.
indeed? Being that this is a simulation and we talked about background people, NPCs, we have the NPCs. That's for those who don't know what that means. It's an acronym for non-playable characters. So in video games, you just got people in the background that's just they're non-playable. They're just there. What happens if a person with a soul gets NPC pregnant, or if that's even possible?
And to my understanding, it is impossible. You can play with the NPC, you can interface with an NPC, but
Mm,
realistically, NPCs can kind of interface with each other and give birth to holographic or more NPCs. But a soul, and we kind of big up to the zombies. We were kind of discussing this on my Zoom last night. Is a
mm,
soul is a individual that comes with the connection to source outside of the firmament. And
mm,
because of that, they can only give birth to that. A soul can only give birth to a soul. Even if
mm.
we try to interface with an NPC or empty seeder, it's just fodder. It's just we play with them and that's it. They're just meant to fill in the space, almost like props in a play.
The reason why I asked that is because if you know, a lot of people in the pro-black movement, going back to the days of Elijah Muhammad, where they talk about the creation of what we call the white race. Some people would say they don't have souls. So then the question always becomes, what happens when a black man gets with a white woman and has that baby? You get what I'm saying? If that black man has a soul and you saying these people don't have souls, then what happens? What is that baby? What is that biracial, the outcome of that biracial child? You get what I'm saying?
Well, complexion doesn't denote soul essence.
Mhm,
There are more mature soul groups and less mature soul groups.
mhm,
So, as you know, that we interface. I always think there's stages of a person's evolution, and I always liken it to, I'm from Generation X, so I'm going to reference it to like a Pac-Man game. At the
yes,
beginning
yes,
of a
yes, yes.
Pac-Man game, you play, you get all the cherries, you know what I'm
Mhm,
saying? There's only
mhm.
one ghost coming through the side, you chilling. Okay. Next stage, you pass that stage. Okay, you may get a cherry. It's a little bit of a struggle. There's still
Mhm,
some ghosts coming on. There's some homies coming from all different angles. And at
mhm,
that last, more evolved stage, when you've gained a lot of wisdom in the game, there's a lot of ghosts, and you could barely get a cherry. But when you accomplish that level, you kind of to supersede that level, that game,
mhm,
that that play game.
mhm,
So I liken it to there are souls here that are newer or spirits, and then their souls are more evolved,
mhm,
and their reincarnation stages. So if someone says complexion matters, I would say whoever has the most difficult, most challenging time in this particular firmament program, it's because they've evolved and they're a higher and more evolved soul. They're just more
mhm,
advanced.
mhm,
So brown people who are experiencing what I consider to be more trials and tribulations, I
mhm,
would liken them to be more advanced because they have reincarnated to the stage where they have evolved to be able to engage with mastery that
mhm,
allows them to overcome, supersede any level of challenges, and then to express themselves, whether it's an exodus or, you know, being, doing an exodus outside of this firmament, this prison system, you
mhm,
know.
mhm. Do you think early in the conversation you made a reference to Tiamat or Tiamat? Do you think some of the souls that incarnated at this time comes from that era of
Yeah,
Tiamat when Earth? Yeah.
yeah, because they have
Mm,
they have her memory. They have a memory of her name, her essence,
mhm,
her physiological makeup. So many of us come from that realm where we remember having beautiful green pastures, engaging with the trees, having sentient interfacing with all of the elementals, whether it be fairies, whether it be the birds, the animals. We had a connection to a more elemental realm.
mhm,
Not everybody's from that realm, though, and you can see it in the behavioral patterns
mhm,
of the general consensus of people
mhm,
in this reality. You have people that are very cold, far removed. They aren't very nature oriented. They may even seem a little detached from interfacing, almost like, there's different layers of, I come from the ET sector, so like insectoid kind of behavior, very Borg like, like, okay, we're going to do this, no emotional connection. And then there
mhm,
are people who are more soft natured and more connective with nature. There's different types of essences with that exist inside this firmament that come from different worlds. And if
mhm,
you ever gotten a chance to see the globe, There's a beautiful map that's done by this South American gentleman, and you see all the different what people perceive as planets. They're just land masses under other domes outside the firmament that we exist. And this I liken to be like a, for some people it's considered to be like a prison system where, you know, you're engaged with like psychopaths, sociopaths, people doing all kinds of you know, ridiculous things, and people are doing a bid here. And there are people who won't ever leave here because they're lifers, so they're caught up in the loop. And that's why their life is so easy here, because just like if you're in prison, you make the best of the situation when you're in prison because you go and do life.
Oh,
You know what
shit.
I'm saying? So you go
You
and do
said
life.
they got a life sentence. Wow. Damn.
Yes. So they
That's
aren't
deep.
able to leave, but what happens is that they want to try to make it so that others can't leave. It's like hating on someone. It's like, if I can't leave, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna make it
Yeah.
very difficult for you to leave. So these
Yeah.
are lifetime loopers, and these are what you see politicians and people on the top tier. And I'm not saying all, but the majority that are illuminated generally are the lower tier as far as ranking in the prison system.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you say very interesting terms. Lifetime loopers. I
Yes.
like that. They're lifetime loopers in
They
your
are. They're
comparison
going
to
to be
the.
back in this loop for the next cycle. After we do reset, they're going to be back in here doing the same shenanigans, causing wreck, creating more chaos, because they haven't the ability. They can evolve, but they've gotten past that. They've
Yeah.
decided to make a decision. They made a decision to participate in low frequency behavior. And once they've done it so many times and they've kind of hacked the system, they can be king in here. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Why leave the firmament when you've gained a certain higher ranking in this, for you know, this holographic existence?
mm. Would you? Is this experiment? Would you want to come back here? Is
Oh,
this something
no, I'm leaving.
you're
Yeah,
you're good with this? You,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so was this a conscious decision from your soul to come here at this
every
time?
every soul is conscious, and even if you're sentenced here into the holographic, you know, programmable loop, you've
Mm.
chosen to come here, whether it's through soul evolution, you needed to come here to gain a certain amount of conscious wisdom, or you've been sentenced here because you were diabolical in the realms you came from.
Hmm. Hmm. Outside of the firmament, what realm would you say you come from?
The Andromeda solar
Andromeda?
system. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
The Andromeda system is it's solely female, so
It's an
most people,
all woman.
it's all women,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Wow.
I
Wow.
think a lot of your movies have spoken about this particular place with
Mm,
Wonder Woman. You know, they just changed the complexion. Your Amazonians are referenced. That is the world I come from. We were able to give birth through parthenogenesis. We existed and lived. We weren't aging. We were a very cohesive, loving group of, you know, wonderful Andromedans. And we've had liaisons with other groups like the Anunnaki, some of the insectoids. We've had great connections with certain groups that are more cohesive to the type of lifestyle that we've lived throughout
mm.
the centuries.
The Anunnaki is a hot topic in the internet community. What can you tell us about the relations between the Anunnaki and the Andromedans?
They're kin. They're like cousins.
They're like
Yeah,
cousins.
they
Okay.
come. The Andromedans originally were from like the Tiamat realm, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of evolved and went into the outer domes, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. The
Mm-hmm.
Anunnaki is like an oversoul group. It's multiple groups that kind of make up. And I don't want to say Anunnaki. Let's say they're the Nibirians.
Mm-hmm.
Nibiru.
Mm-hmm.
It's multiple groups that kind of make up that landmass, and
Mm-hmm.
um, though they've been heinously disregarded, especially on YouTube, they've
Mm-hmm.
been talked about, vilified. That is actually the opposite. And you should know, I tell people to always recognize that when they try to vilify something and try to demonize it, most likely it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These are more melanated beings, likened to some of our ancient statues that you see in ancient Kemet or the Sumerian tablets.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of genetic background, so there's a lot of genetic splicing and dicing that they've done over time to kind of make people more cohesive, like certain species more cohesive, and try
Mm-hmm.
to mesh them so that they can make kind of like a different hybrid, so to speak, that was more cohesive for whatever terrain they were going to exist in. The Anunnaki are blamed for a lot of the tyrannical things, but there are other groups that have done much more heinous things. And when it comes to the melanated groups, the Anunnaki is the top tier, along with some of the Centaurians and the Andromedans that work together cohesively.
Mm-hmm.
And their mark here, before a lot of the lies of the historical accounts, people saying that brown people were slaves. If you look in some of the old archives, and I'm not talking about on Google, you got to go a little further. I'm from a
Yeah.
certain generation when we had to research and we had to actually go to the books and literature and old archives. You'll see that the lies were that brown people were enslaved for a longer period of time. But what it was is that there were higher hierarchy of brown people and living well and living without some form of enslavement. And actually, it's the opposite. There were lunars, well, white people who were enslaved under that tier. And when we did the flip, it kind of flipped where there was an advantage for them. So brown people weren't always slaves. In a lot of historical accounts, they speak about that. That wasn't true. They were the builders of a lot of the societies, the Tatarian societies you see. Those were melanated people that built a lot of those foundations. When you talk about the Tatarian societies that existed previous to the mud floods, am I going too far?
No, 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 not good.
So,
No, not at
so,
all.
so because of that, we're living in a polarity in a system, this snow globe,
Hmm.
this firmament that we're existing in. It deals with polarities. So whenever one is above, it'll kick up the next one during the reset. That's why the Masons like to do the black and white, the checkerboard, because it's reminiscent of the polarities playing out. So
Hmm.
literally, when one part of society is raised up, it will live out that time frame until reset. And then if they haven't evolved to a certain conscious level, they will experience whatever tyranny they've expressed on others. So
Hmm.
that's why you see the bouncing up and down. So race, I don't believe in races. I believe in different conscious levels, and
Hmm.
also blood types also are reminiscent of different species. So if you're a positive Roost, you're probably from that same genetic makeup. And if you're negative Roost, you come from a different expression of genetic makeup.
A little while ago, you referred to white people as lunar people. Why was that? What did you mean?
Because of the color of the moon. So I always
Mm.
say, because I always thought it was really generic to call people by a complexion that wasn't really denoting really what they
Hmm.
were. So
Hmm.
I don't think calling brown people black, which is actually the opposite, because when you do a reflection, black people are actually light beings, and
Yes.
lunars actually are devoid of light. So
Hmm.
it's actually people. I prefer to call people by something that I think is more luminous and positive.
Indeed. So where does you mentioned Sirius and Andromeda? No, you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned Andromeda and Anunnaki. Where does Sirius play into this whole thing? Because a lot of
Sirius
a lot of people would say they're from Sirius.
Sirius is another, again, if you look at, I wish I had the map. If you look at the globe and you look at
Mm.
the other outer land masses, Sirius is out close to, I think it's out close to Andromeda. I think people are having memories of being from there and being from that Sirius star system and being connected to other outer land masses where they connect to the beings from that realm. That's all.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't
Indeed.
believe in planets that are above. That's a hologram. The planets
Right.
aren't above, they're around us.
Okay, so all right, so the planets are around us. The whole universe is a firmament. So how do we travel to these other planets?
Through portals and
Through portals.
vortexes, but you have to qualify.
Ooh, give me explain.
Well, not everyone there, even though the government, I like to say Willy Wonka. I have code words for government, but usually the government, they use jump rooms to be able to travel in and out of different parts and sectors of our so-called galaxy, right? And the
Mm, mm,
different dimensions. But if you qualify, meaning that you raised a certain, you're at a certain tier in frequency and vibration, you are able to access specific portals that are genetically connected to your ancestors.
mm,
So that's why there was also a movement of brown people, which were the natives to the Americas. Okay.
mm,
That's
mm,
what the reason was, and the motivation was to move them around so they wouldn't be able to access their native portals.
mm.
So during times, that's why you didn't see the ancient Kemetics, there anymore, because they exited out of their portals, their vortexes, and also with the Mayans and also with the Olmecs. You aren't seeing those societies where those people are still there because during those cataclysms, they had the chance to exit out of the portals that were genetically reminiscent, connected to their DNA.
Hmm. Wow, that's very interesting. So what would you say? What part of our biological technology activates these portals? Like,
Well,
is it our heart? Is it our memory? Is it the DNA? What activates these portals? Like, if I was to see one, like, you know, in the movies they got these spaceships, and you got to know how to work the spaceship.
yeah,
What will get that spaceship working within our technology?
it's kind of like this. A baby wouldn't have access. Like if you see a newborn baby and the
Yeah,
baby's, somewhere, they would look at a book and they wouldn't know what it was. They wouldn't know
yeah,
how to access it. So it's likened to a person's consciousness. When a person reaches a certain level or tier, it makes them more appropriate or qualified to be able to access forms of information or technology
mm-hmm,
of that specific conscious awareness that they are now accrued. So
mm,
it's, if you notice a portal, first of all, if you can see it, it means that your first eye is able to perceive it because you're resonating at that same frequency. It's like
mm.
people who see ships. Some people, you could stand with your homeboys and be like, yo,
Yeah,
there's a ship up there.
and they
And they'd
won't
be like,
see
yo,
it.
I don't see it. No,
Yeah,
you don't see it up there? No. Why? Is because you're resonating at a different frequency, and your frequency is elevated enough to perceive something outside of your normal spectrum of awareness. So as soon as you accrue a certain conscious state, then it makes you it makes things applicable to your ability to be able to access it. So as
mm,
soon as you reach a frequency, those portals you'll most likely be able to perceive them. And then
mm.
once you're able to perceive them, if genetically you have an alignment with those portals, most likely you'll be able to access, depending on the time frame or the phases in the moon, or just the, sometimes portals aren't able to be accessed until the planet, the way that we're shifted, is at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. No, indeed, indeed. So much talk about UFO activity on the news, on the internet, on YouTube, everywhere right now. Some people say it's Blue Beam, Project Blue Beam is the government, but a lot of people are emailing me privately and saying, "Hey, I'm seeing more activity in the sky more than ever." So, talk to me about this whole UFO thing that we keep hearing about recently.
Well, it isn't new.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that people's consciousness has risen to be aware of them now. And
Mm-hmm.
also with the earth changes, with the reset, our firmament is about to implode, so to speak. So our stratosphere is lowering, meaning that there's more pressure. And you
Mm-hmm.
usually, many people are saying they're feeling spinal pains, back pains, lower back pains, is because the way that our gravitational pull is, we're normally used to a certain amount of gravity. Once the firmament and that stratosphere is pushing down, it's pushing everything down that was higher up. So
Mm-hmm.
now what was above is noted because it's being pushed down. So now people are being able to see and witness some of these crafts. Now, not all crafts are the same. Some are reverse engineered by our government, our wonderful government, who's utilized technology that they gain through you know, unsavory means. Let's just say that, okay? And sometimes it's ships like them. And Dr. Delbert Blair usually gave us a great verification that generally, if you saw crafts with the white lights, they
Mm-hmm.
generally were non-magnetic ships, meaning they
Mm-hmm.
weren't very high vibrational beings. Could be Borgs, could be a lot of the Greys that have those ships or control those ships. They're lower vibrational and more disconnected to what we consider to be organic. Anything that has colors like purple or pink or blue or red,
Mm-hmm.
those have magnetic energy. And those are more likely higher fielded, much more magnetic beings, and they have a better connection to humanity, so to speak. So those are more positive, and those are generally connected to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talked earlier about being from Andromeda and it being a planet consisting of
Females,
females.
yes.
What do you? Why do you think here on in this firmament in on planet Earth? Why do you think the female presence or the divine feminine fell?
Did
And
she?
when I say fell, I mean you just like we could say black people fell. We could say
Yeah.
we were once running things here and now everywhere you turn around it looks like we're on the bottom. I hear so much about societies that used to be matriarchy,
Yeah.
and now you're seeing societies where ISIS was replaced by the Holy Ghost. Religions that Allah, they may talk about Allah, but they won't talk about Allah,
Yeah.
the feminine counterpart. You
Yeah.
always hear about male gods, you never hear about goddesses. So
Yeah.
it seems like that power, that feminine power, isn't as strong as it used to be. Why is that?
Well, from my understanding, is that generally, whenever there's a so-called patriarchy that's playing out here,
Mm-hmm.
it's on a higher tier. It's a female who's on top, and the 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 understanding of that is when a female is ruling, she wants males to be in the. She wants less competition, so there's more suppression of a female when there's a female on the higher tiers. When there's a male on the higher tiers, you'll see a flip, and then you'll see more females playing a higher hierarchy or more matriarchy in that realm. So I personally don't think that it's. I think on the top it's a female, and she's making sure she's suppressing any competition, almost like the story of Sleeping Beauty. You know, the
Right.
stepmother was like, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all? And her stepdaughter was the bomb.com, and she was hating on her. So what she do? She set out to go kill her, right? So she had to go hide in the forest, but it's the same thing. So I personally think that on the top, like Queen Lizzie, the lizard, just passed away. Rest in peace to the queen. You know what I'm saying? So once she passed, you're going to see a passing of the torch. That's why you're starting to see a shift of males starting to become the opposite, because now the player realm is going to be more reminiscent of a matriarchy than a patriarchy, because the queen is no longer in rulership. When she passed away, the torch is passed over to a male. We're playing in polarities.
Right.
This is a polarity system. Okay.
Right. Indeed. Yeah, that's quite interesting you say that. Even with my interactions, um, throughout my life with women, I've noticed that they were very competitive with each other. So yeah, that's very interesting
Yeah.
that you say that. Very
Yeah, that's
interesting.
why they have all these shows like what's the show like Housewives of Atlanta. It's
Yeah.
always competing with females competing for that one man. It's because on the top of the rulership there was a queen. When
Right.
she transcends, that's changed over to the male, and then you're going to start seeing females in
Mm,
the middle realm being more
mm,
domineering and a suppression of the patriarchy. And you're seeing that with the males now being vilified for being masculine. You know,
mm.
it's beautiful to have masculine
You,
males.
since we talk about the competitive nature, how did polygamy ever work? If polygamy was once a thing, how did that ever work out if females are so competitive with each other?
Well, I don't. Polygamy wasn't for the common man.
Mm,
That
mm,
was more for that was for the kingdom. So if you wanted
right.
to bring two kingdoms together, one that was competitive, it was in alignment to allow for, maybe there was something that, let's say you were from Ireland and I was from France, right?
Mm, mm,
And it would be cohesive, like you had something in your kingdom that would have made us, if we came together, it would bring peace to our lands and give us more power. And
mm,
sometimes if I wasn't able to sire, you weren't able to sire a male with me, you may want to bring on another female that was able to bring on a son, even though that's not our responsibility. Because an older male usually births males. Younger males generally birth females, especially if they're
mm,
strong and aggressive. That's just
mm,
science.
mm,
So I think that had to do with power, just being able to bring in and bond and bring in, children, more children to be heir to that society. That wasn't for the common man. It's just like we didn't eat a lot of the junk that the kings and queens did, but as soon as we got an opportunity to, now we eat like them, and everybody's having heart issues. You know what I mean? So I think that was just adopted. That's my personal take. I don't think that was for a common person. I think that was for the royals and those who were in higher tiers.
every day on the internet I see men dogging women, women dogging men. Why do you think there's so much um you know beef with each other at this point, between, especially with the black man and the black woman, and especially on the internet? Why do you, spiritually, on another level, we know why it's happening on one level, but on a bigger level, why do you think that's taking place?
It's being incentivized, because to break up that union, that's the most powerful union in this firmament.
Hmm.
When you get a cohesive male, beautiful melanated male, and a powerful, conscious melanated female with a womb that could
Hmm.
sire the most conscious children, that's a threat to society on top,
Hmm.
because now you're going to give birth to men that are strong and powerful, and women that are safe and can birth in the new layers of future societies.
Hmm.
That's why. So I think that's totally, it's purposefully propaganda. It's being socially engineered, and it is coming from Willy Wonka and his League of Doom. They're putting that out there, and they're causing these kind of risks, because naturally, especially melanated women and men. I mean, we've always been together and cohesive. I mean, if you look at the 50s and 40s, I mean, we used to dance together, love each other. I mean, it was the greatest bond. It was when, we decided to, desegregate and, start to meld in, then Willy Wonka, I say government, that's how I call it. Willy Wonka decided to incentivize for men to be not as needed in the household by giving women, other forms of income that, naturally men, you're meant to, provide and protect. If you have somebody else, a third party coming in offering to provide and then adding, housing and all that other stuff, that's going to take away and break away that coupling. It's totally engineered by the government. That isn't natural. And people who are doing that online, they're being incentivized by getting paid a lot of money. And I'm sure they're agents, some of them.
What do you you talk about the government? What groups of extraterrestrials are working side by side with the government to carry out this agenda that we see the Vatican or whoever carrying out at this time?
Well, most people think it's the Greys, but the Greys are a bioborg. They're not even natural.
Well, that's
so
what I heard.
It isn't the
right.
Greys. Most people utilize that as the front, the cover, to cover the other ones in the background. No. Generally, there's a couple different groups that are working, and some of the presidents back in the day sold us out, like Roosevelt, Jefferson. They made agreements with some of these more nefarious groups and wanted to use some humans for harvesting. So what they did is they sold out part of the society, 1/4, and it happens in every society, but they sold out. And what has happened since then is that we've had. I would like to say that I know people don't like when I say this, but it's my opinion. It's these Pelagians. I really think they're nefarious. These so-called, glorious Pelagians. I personally think that sector, along with other Nordic type of beings, are working with the government, and they're utilizing those positions to harvest on melanated people globally for experimentations. And that's when you get the Greys and everything. Most people just talk about the Greys, but really the Greys are like the middleman, that the Borgs that are being, basically, programmed to go and get and harvest. And they're the ones who usually get the blame, but those are not real beings. Most of them are bioborgs. They're not organic. Most Greys are not even from our area. They're so far out. They're not from here.
I remember one time Dick Gregory was on the Breakfast Club, and rest in power to Dick Gregory. Yes. And he said that a lot of the people that are going missing, because we continues to hear about people going missing. Where did they go? Where are these people going? And we hear about the organ harvesting. Yeah. Dick Gregory says something along the lines that they're being taken to another planet.
Another world, yeah.
Another world, right.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? Is there anything you...
Well, I have a theory, and it's very controversial.
I want to hear it. I'm ready. I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Well, okay. My theory is that the only way you can leave out of here through the firmament or the plasma is with melanin. And if you look at a lot of places and see missing brown people from many different nations, you start to think to yourself, wow, is it possible that they just genocided them? Or who's using all these organs? Right. But I don't know if you saw years ago, and I think there was only a few of us who saw this episode on the, it was on, not the, it was an old show. It was called the, not the, oh gosh, it was a show. Okay, anyway, it was a show that used to come on, kind of like, like a regular show that shows like different scenarios and space aliens and so on. Well, there was one show that is shown on YouTube now, but they took out a scene. And it was a show when they had a scenario where these space aliens came from space, and they came here and they said to the government, hey, we have all this wonderful thing. We can heal your whole world. We can make everything great for y'all. But we just need one thing. And they said, yeah, what do you need? We have things that maybe we can offer you, And they said, we need all your brown people.
Whew.
They said, brown people? So I forgot the guy who played Benson. You're years younger than I am. The guy who played Benson was in the movie. I forgot his name. And he was like, they'll never let brown people. Who was
Cosmic Slop?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not the original. It was Outer Limits. Outer Limits was the original show. Cosmic Slop took it, but they took out the scene.
Okay.
So during the scene, the guy says, they'll never take all brown people. That's not possible. He had a lunar wife. He was like, nah, they're not going to do that. Next thing you know, you already know. They sold out the brown people.
Yeah.
So all brown people, every last one of them had to leave and go on the ship specifically. So you see at the end, they're all going, they're crying, they're friends. Oh my God, they don't know what's going on. Then the next thing you know, they get on. Now, this is a scene that they took off the internet totally. This is when I'm going to share my scenario. So as the last person, the brown person goes on, they turn around, they look, and they're like, oh, snap, they sold us out. They get in, the ship goes in, closes off, the ship goes whoop, right into the sky. Then there's a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the entire earth blows up. Okay, so I remember seeing that as a child. You notice they took that off of the internet totally. My theory is brown people are being, because they have a chemical content, which just gives, because Delbert Blair used to say it was a passport to the galaxy, having melanin.
Passport.
Okay?
You're right.
So my thing is, I personally think that's why a lot of white celebrities and a lot of certain people who are conscious, like higher tier Masons, the Brotherhood, they get brown women especially because they know they use them as barter because they have the ability to leave. So I personally think that not all brown people are being harvested. I think they're being used almost like ransom so that they can have access to the outer world, because brown people, and if you look at places like that, there's a theory in Argentina where all the people disappeared that were brown and they don't know where they are. And, I'm in South America a lot and they don't know where they are. They say, oh, they mixed with everybody. No, because it's close to Antarctica, where the brown woman, there's a brown woman who was sighted on top of the ice wall. She was like 12 feet tall, a brown sister, cosmic sister. She had like illuminated white hair, like the Anunnaki woman, white hair, and she stands on the ice wall. That's an Andromedan. So I personally think that during the reset, brown people have access to those portals and they get exoduses out. That's why I think lunar people get brown children as a bartering system. And I think they keep them to see if they can have access as well. I think it's almost like a piggybacking kind of thing.
Well, like when Madonna adopts black children like that, right?
Yeah, I think they do it because they know that those children have an ability to access the outer realms, outside the firmament, outside the plasma walls.
That is a very, very interesting theory. Wow, whole brown people for ransom. That was.
I don't think slavery was what it was. I think it was more ransom. I think they knew. If you look at Reset, and I don't know how much you studied the Tatarian societies, when all these cities are emptied out and the originators are never there. Where did they go? Not all of them are killed. Not all the bones are found. Where'd they go? And why is it only the places where brown people built that they disappear?
What's your thoughts with all of this talk? What's your thoughts about extraterrestrials? What's your thoughts on AI, artificial intelligence, and it getting ready to take over our technology at this time?
They're not taking over. They've always been in control. This is a simulation. It's always been ran by AI. It was a passive AI that most of us weren't aware of. Now it's becoming more overt and more perceived by the majority of people. But it's always been here. So that, along with the Chinese, who are another sector of a type of beings that always take over the reset. That's why they go over globally like Borgs. They go everywhere and they take over every single landmass. That's why you see Asiatic features on every terrain, because before reset, they naturally know to go and take over areas and make it into some, start to, take away the manpower and start to create, machinery to take over where man won't be able to do that anymore.
Indeed. What percentage of the world, we're talking about Sims and souls. What percentage of the world would you say are soul people?
You want me to be honest?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
I'm about 10%.
I knew it was going to be somewhere. Wow.
Yeah.
That's low.
It's like being in a holodeck. We're in a holodeck. You ever watch Star Trek? We're in a holodeck. remember Captain Kirk would go in there. They go in to do like they go into the to play like cowboys. They go in there. Everybody in there is a sim. Everybody in there is an empty seater. It
You,
looks like a lot of people. It's an illusion. And how you know is because people loop all the time. That's how you know they're background people.
I had that thought. I said 15% a couple of years ago to myself in my
Mhm.
head because and I said that because of this. And everybody, a lot of people experience this. Wherever you go, the world's supposed to be so big, but wherever you go, you know somebody that knows somebody. So I said, if there's so many people, why every? I mean, I went. You could go. I could go to Belize tomorrow.
Yeah.
Somehow, I'm gonna know somebody that knows somebody that knows me that knows this person. It's like it doesn't seem like there's as many people as they say it is in the world because it's like
Mhm.
we're all connected somehow.
Yeah, and separation is an illusion. So we're in a holodeck. It's
Mm,
a very close space. It's even when you fly, it doesn't make sense how many hours. It's almost like they're flying around the dome to make it seem longer. There aren't many souls here. Back in the days, remember they'd be like, "You got soul," like the
yeah, yeah.
soul train. It wasn't, but also, having rhythm is reminiscent of those who have a soul because when you're connected to the beat, to the frequency of the base frequency of the planet, it lets me know that you're connected. You're a soul being. Soul
Mm,
beings have a beat and they're connected. It's like the plants and the animals, they're all on a rhythm, and the rhythm is always the same. When
mm.
someone doesn't have a beat, it lets me think that they don't have a soul.
Right, right,
They're not
right.
connected to the natural rhythmic cues of this firmament, this inside this dome.
Hmm. Being that you say it's a firmament and that it's a hologram, what's in the sky, the planets aren't out there. There's always accounts of the ancients saying we got visit from the sky. They always talk about the sky,
Yeah.
whether it's the Dogon or whatever. So if the sky, if it's all a hologram in the sky, why is there so much talk in the ancient texts about the sky?
Because the sky changes all the time. I mean, remember, as above, so below. It's like we change. When we do a flip, it depends on the perception of sky. And also, remember, words and meanings change over time. So,
Hmm.
really, does sky mean above or does it be below? You got to be careful with that. Or if they point up, it could mean that they're pointing out because even though we're in a dome, there's still outer realms.
Hmm.
So, what could be perceived is something comes through a vortex or a
Hmm.
stargate and it comes from above like a if the Dogon saw like a helicopter, they would say it
Hmm.
came from above, but it didn't
Hmm.
mean that it came from all the way above. It could have came from somewhere else and just appeared from above.
Right, right, right. So, what's your thoughts about the waters, the ocean, deep down in the ocean? What's going on down
You
there,
trying to trigger
Queen?
me?
Yeah, tell me, talk to me. What's going on down deep in
um,
the ocean?
well, that's all plasma.
Uh-huh.
You I made a video saying plasma in, plasma, like blood in, blood out, plasma in,
Hmm.
plasma out. In order to come in here, you got to come through the waters, and to come through the womb, you come through plasma. To be here, you have to walk through plasma. Everything exists with plasma. When a bird is born from an egg, it has plasma inside. So everything, we're in kind of like an egg if you think about it. We're kind of an egg, like a yolk, to
Mm.
be
Mm.
honest. And I was talking about before is that there's waters above and waters below. I personally think that we're under some sort of water, like some sort of ocean,
Right.
and all of these different domes, because all of the outer worlds, they're under domes as well. So
Right.
you got to think to yourself, why is if you ever look at like SpongeBob or what's another Squidward? I forgot the other one. There was like another one. They were living in the underground world, or even with Aquaman. Look at the world underneath, or the
Right.
Black Panther. But
Yeah.
they weren't living in a dome. I personally think that we're underwater
Uh-huh.
in an unconscious state, in some
Hmm.
sort of cryo state,
Hmm.
and our consciousness is being avatared here. So we have, once we reach a certain layer or level or frequency, and we have the ability to exodus or rapture
Hmm.
outside the firmament, which you have to match the plasma. Because once we go through reset, the plasma becomes more permissible to permeate through, but you have
Mm.
to be at a higher vibration. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So you have the ability to go outside of that. But I personally think there's water above us and water below us. And that's why people years ago used to see fish dropping out the sky. They used to have, back on
That's
YouTube, back
interesting.
in the days when I was on YouTube, it was like the guy took a picture and it disappeared, but it was like a whale flying in the sky.
Mm.
Remember,
Mm.
like squid, they were seeing octopus in the sky. Where are you seeing octopi in the sky?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you seeing like aquatic entities in the sky?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in some sort of firmament, and above it is water and below it is water.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally think, like I said, in order to come in and out, you got to go through, even on the stargates. Look at the stargates; they all have water in the stargates. Every stargate movie you see, it's always like a water gate. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So, or porthole, porthole. You know, when you go ice fishing and you open up that hole to go fishing, you got to open it
Mm-hmm.
up to go in. That's all in water. So I
Mm.
think the water encases the entire firmament, not only ours, but the other worlds outside of this firmament.
Indeed. Wow. Definitely, definitely. You know, this world, Earth, how do you think, what level of importance do you think when we talk about Andromeda, when we talk about Sirius, when we talk about the Pleiades, what level of importance do you think we have in a universal scheme of things? How important is Earth?
Oh, I think we get a badge of honor when we leave here. This is the biggest battlefield. This is like aliens versus predator.
Oh,
Like when you
okay.
dropped in, remember you saw like
Yeah.
Annihilating was in there. They dropped them in there. Like that was part of the battle. The aliens, they actually wanted to battle. So you gain a lot of wisdom. You gain some brownie points. Like you get badges of honor. If you
Mm,
come out of here and you go in the outer world, they're going to see you and perceive you as a higher master of
mm,
multiple realms, because you're interfacing with multiple beings from
mm,
different types of dimensional kind of makeups, and you're able to overcome them, come out unscathed, and be able to keep that conscious awareness.
mhm.
You're like the bomb.com outside of here.
So you mentioned Pac-Man. So Earth would be the final level in Pac-Man then.
Right on.
Oh
That's
wow.
right. Or the final level of like Resident Evil. You know what I'm saying? When you meet the nemesis. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It's the
Oh
final
man.
level, and like I said, when you come here, there isn't any victims here. You kinetically, we create our whole reality. We have the ability, because it's a simulation. The frequency that you are is what you emanate, and it was what you create. So
Mhm.
whatever you are is how you. I always used to tell people, if you want to know what's going on with you, check the mic. Just see what's going on around you. If you have chaos around you, if you have diabolical, sneaky beings, you got to really look inward to see where inside of yourself you haven't resolved some of the hurt, trauma, or things that you do to others that you don't see. So you get to see them through a mirror. This is all a
Mhm.
reflective realm too. It's a mirror to who you are. Like if
Right.
you watch the Never Ending Story, which is good for little ones. If you have
Mhm.
little ones, the Never Ending Story. Like
Mhm.
at the end, the hardest realm is when um, what was it? A trail. I think a trail was his name. A trail got the hardest layers when he had to see himself in a mirror. That was
Mhm.
the hardest layer, because when we truly see ourselves is when we can change. You can't, like right now, I have an image here, right? If
Mhm.
my hair is messy, do I fix this right here? No. I fix
Mhm.
this, and then
Mhm.
when I fix this, that's fixed.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, this is also a reflective realm. So that's why I'm saying thoughts are things. Whatever you think, whatever you create, whatever frequency you're emanating, you will create in your reality. So there isn't any victims here. If you're having a hard time, you got to work on self. Like right now, we're fasting for 30 days. I mean, that's what we have to do. Sometimes you have to clear yourself, reset, because there's a reset going on the outside, but sometimes we have to reset ourselves. Check yourself and just make sure you're okay. Your biodome is good, because if this isn't good, because most disease comes from mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
99% of disease comes
Mhm.
from mind. It's
Mhm.
all us creating it. So there aren't
Mhm.
any victims here. This is a participation video game.
Part participation video game. Wow. I love
It's
it.
all, yeah, this is a video game. And if you know it is, then you have all control. You know what I mean? There isn't
Mhm.
anything. If you want love, you can have love, but you have to be love in order to have love. You have to know what that is. It's
Mhm.
harder to create what you haven't any connection to, or any visualization or vibration of. So you
Right.
got to, yeah.
No, definitely. I'm listening. Yeah. No, I agree with you 1,000%. I think the one of the most important things you just said just now is that this is a reflective world.
Yeah,
And you use example, if your hair is messed up, you're not gonna
change
touch
the
the
screen.
yeah,
No,
you're not gonna touch the screen. You have to
no,
touch your hair. So I just did a show the other day. I'll give you an example. I did a show. I'm gonna do a relationship like a relationship show.
that'd be fun.
And
Yeah,
the one of the main things that people say is that there's no good people out here in the world.
that's
And then
interesting.
during the show, I told them, I said, you're looking in the wrong place. You have to look inside. You can't look outside. You have to find inside is infinite good people. It's infinite. There's no
Absolutely.
limitation inside. So but I think a lot of people didn't understand it and get it. But I totally get it when you said this is a reflective world, and I think,
Perspective is
yeah,
everything. It's
yeah,
you acknowledge what you are. You know what I mean? It's
hmm
a projection thing. So, and also with all social media, the young people, they get all this glamour stuff on their computers. So it really gives them a false sense of reality too.
hmm
People are less likely to work on self if they can just create an illusion and then make that fake the funk, until
hmm
somebody checks it. You know what I
hmm
mean? So relationships, you aren't able to have a decent relationship unless you can have a good relationship with self. And if you love you, regardless of what you look, and let me talk to the sea stars, regardless, I'm not a thin young woman. I'm a thickums and I'm a certain age. And I love myself. And I've gained that amount of respect and honor for myself over time with trials and tribulations. But at the end of the day, when I go to bed or before I go to bed, I have to look at myself in the mirror.
hmm
So
hmm
I always say to the young sea stars, because they criticize them, and they're so pretty. You have such beautiful young women in your generation, Rich. They're so
yeah,
beautiful, and they don't know it. Like I always tell them on the show, like you are beautiful, you're perfect. Like who wants a replica? Who wants a knockoff of
hmm
something else? You always want the original. If you
hmm
got this in your chin, you're perfect. Like having uniqueness to yourself makes you a perfected being because nothing else can knock you off.
hmm
If you make yourself too much look like Becky, Sue, Rashonda, then anything could replace you. You know
hmm
what I mean? Be you, do you.
hmm
If you love yourself, whoever matches that is going to love you. I don't
hmm
have to pretend. You know how many people have to? I don't pretend that I don't see aliens. I tell them off the bat. That's who I am. And if they about that life, they respect me and they want to be around. If not, then that's okay.
right, right. What is your thoughts on the moon and moon magic? I hear some people say the moon is fake. The moon is it's a satellite. There's evil entities on the moon. Some people say the moon is magical and the moon used to be a part of Earth. Some people say the moon magic don't work. I would love to know your thoughts on moon magic and the moon.
First of all, in this firmament
Yeah.
that we exist in,
Mm-hmm.
the moon isn't real. It's a
Okay.
hologram, just like the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
simulation sun. You know what I mean? So I think magic with intent
Mm-hmm.
works with any
What?
illuminating factor.
Okay.
So I think if someone has a connection to the moon and that
Mm-hmm.
illumination, then by
Mm-hmm.
all means their magic will work. It's
Mm-hmm.
really just the intent. But in
Mm-hmm.
my perspective, the moon hasn't existed. It's a hologram, and we're living in a holodeck. That
Mm-hmm.
isn't true. But there are worlds where people remember the multiple moons that were luminous in their realms. And
Mm-hmm.
that could be what they're connected to. So I
Mm-hmm.
try now, when I was younger, I was like, I used to criticize it, but now I'm like, if it works and you feel connected to that little luminous, fake,
Mm-hmm.
that in the sky, then by all means, because it's really intent. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like I can lie into the sun. Like I go in the sun and I know it's a simulation. I like to go and get solared up, you know what I mean? And I know what it is. But what my intent is I'm here to fill my tank. So I go into the sun knowing that it's gonna fill up my chi, give me, fill up my tank, and then I use that energy as needed.
Some people say the sun is a portal and this is a hologram, and the real information we get that comes from other places is through the sun because it's not coming from this
Yeah.
universe. It's
Yeah.
coming from somewhere else.
I
So
agree.
you think the sun is a portal?
It's a hole in
So
the
yeah,
ceiling
yeah.
in the ceiling of the dome. Did you watch King Kong versus Godzilla?
I didn't see that one. No, I
You
didn't
didn't
see it.
see? How do you not
No,
see
no,
that one?
no, I didn't
That's when they
see it.
go into inner Earth. That's the
Mm.
bomb. They got the hologram. They got the holodeck.
Oh
Anyone who
man.
needs to see that, you need to see that. That is just basically, that if this is a hologram, if you accept that, I don't want to,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
everyone's perspective is their perspective. If
Mm-hmm.
you accept that this is a hologram and this is basically a projection
Mm-hmm.
screen, then you know that everything the luminous, whatever's luminous in the sky, is basically some sort of technology that's used to, uh, you know, uh, uh, create, simulate a place
Mm-hmm.
that we probably recognize where we came from outside of here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I personally think it's a hole in the ceiling that's luminous. And yes, that's where things can escape in as far as like messages, binary codes that kind of up level you, especially we're going through this shift where all these different energies are coming in. It comes through that portal.
Mm-hmm. 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 What's your thoughts on so much talk about the hologram? What's your thoughts on the hologram and food? In our diet, there's so much debate about what our diet should be. Should we be vegan? Shouldn't we be vegan? Should we eat meat? Should we drink this? Should we drink water? Should we drink coconut water? Talk to me about hologram and food.
Well, you know, thoughts are things, and also remember we're living in a time where we're before a reset, and these diabolical ones are dirtying up, putting graphene in all the food, and
Mm,
making it that. And I think um, and it's really calling for us to draw in and stop outsourcing to things outside of ourselves, because the only way that they can infiltrate our bodies is if we invite them in like a vampire.
mm-hmm,
So I think genetically, and this is my beginning stage, when I was younger, I studied genetics. So I think
mm,
for certain types of blood types, certain types of genetics, certain food directives are better for certain types of people. I think melanated women, especially those of us who come, most of us come from the Americas. Some of us
mm-hmm,
come from Africa if you've come and migrated here, but most of us are from the Americas. We generally eat the sun, that solar kind of energy, that chi. And
right,
that's
right.
why we get bloated up more than other women, because we weren't meant to outsource. We were able
Mm,
to take in all energy and use that as food. That's why people always say, well, women, brown women are big. And it's not that. It's like, would you go and get a guinea pig and give them the wrong food? We've been socially engineered to eat food that's from other species types, and we aren't outsourcers. We were able to give birth ourselves without any. We can always take in a man's seat. Oh, I'll behave. Um, we can
not
always take it. I'm gonna behave. I told Rich I behave tonight. Because I come from my sector, and we get a little rough over there. But we can take in a man's love from his wand. We can, but also as women, we were able to co-create everything within ourselves. So women of melanation, we generally don't need to outsource for food. So that's why we bloat up. That's why fasting, I can look like a regular person, and someone else who fasts, they look like they're emaciated. Because
mhm,
me, genetically, I come from a people that ate the sun. That's why I
mhm,
tell women to go out and get as much sun on their body, full on body, as possible, especially if they're melanated. Then there's women that are a little more fair skinned. Maybe they come from Nordic areas. They need to bring in more food source, and they're okay with things like dairy or goat milk or things like that, because their endocrine system can process that a little differently. Their ancestors needed things outsourced, insourced to sustain
mhm.
their bodies. And for males, especially melanated males, I mean, y'all were like hunter, like you go out and hunt, but you didn't eat meat every day. You ate when you hunted, we had it. And then the rest of your diet was mostly legumes and fruit and veggies straight from the vine. We didn't have a requirement. And at the time, you know, back when we we had healthier terrain, so you can basically get most of your nutrition. Because when I went to Brazil, I'm in Brazil a lot of the times. Brazil, no one really drinks water. They drink coconut water all day long. They
Right,
just eat
right, right.
coconut, and that's what they have for the electrolytes, and that sustains them. And the food is really juicy and has a lot of liquid, so they don't require to drink as much water because they're not dehydrated from eating processed foods. You know.
You mentioned uh you're from the 18th sector. So what is the 18th sector? Could you elaborate on that? You said this word sector twice. What is this 18th sector
You
that
mean
you're
the
referring
ET,
to?
the ET sector?
Yeah, 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 yeah. What is
Well, I've been on YouTube since 2011, and then before then, I was part of the UFO community, meaning that you know these are the people who are either contactees or abductees who were connected to the others outside, who had a layer of intimacy with the. I don't mean intimacy like sexual, but
mhm,
intimacy meaning a good relationship with beings from other dimensions and other, I don't want to say galaxies because that's generic, outside of this realm. And that sector, I mean, we were always aware of the things that would happen in the future as far as reset. We're always aware of the time and the climate changes that would come,
mhm,
because once we get closer to the end and the beginning again, they always do. It's a pattern. It's a loop. They do the same thing over and over. So the extraterrestrials, which is a generic term, the others have always let us know that this is just a loop. it's just a program. That's why there isn't anything new. It's the same program. Like if you see, if you go back in the days and listen, even the fake archives they have, and you read some of the books, it's the same playbook that they do right now. They just change a little bit of the scenery, put a little bit of extra lighting, you know what I'm saying? Put a bedazzle a little bit, but it's the same thing. So if you know that generally it's the same cylindrical pattern, and we're doing the same thing over and over, you can kind of master everything. Is predictive programming. It's everything has happened before. It's gonna happen again. It'll happen tomorrow.
Oh, indeed, indeed. What let's get into a couple of questions from the people in the chat.
Okay.
I know they was very excited to get you on here.
Oh, let me get
And
shout out to my homies. Shout out to the Zombies and everyone else. Thank you so much for having me.
indeed. Shout out to everybody. We got about 3,000 people in the chat.
Yes.
Shout out to everybody listening. Let's get right away to this first question. What's your take on mermaids? They want to know what's your take on mermaids.
That's another species. There's many different people who are genetically connected to the MERS. You know, when you hear the MERS, the MOORs, you know, you care about but the Moors, but the MERS, you know what I mean? Because we live in water, actually we breathe in water and we live underwater, our genetic makeup, a lot of you wonderful sea stars are connected to the MERS, meaning you are genetically more cohesive and genetically connected to the mermaids or the mer people or the nomos that exist in the waterways now. That's why in Africa, big up to our homies who were in Africa over in Benin. Benin won't, they tell people not to go in the waters. They tell them not to enter the waterways. And you think to yourself, it's beautiful. The waters look amazing. They demonize the waters. And there's a Christian religious sector over in Africa. Some of you know about it, where they talk about the marine spirits and they demonize any of their people, the people going to the church who are connected to, oh, the marine spirits, oh, they're possessing you at night and you're going to your husband, because they know genetically some of you come from that world, and they want to disconnect you from your because the telepathic messages that those beings, those entities, and they're living amongst us. They have captured pictures and images of them. They're vicious when they come across some of the sailors because they know what happens when they are captured, but some of you are connected to them. So if you personally have thyroid issues, I always say, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a referee, but I do know something. A lot of people will have hypothyroid or thyroid issues because the gills are here. That's generally connected to them trying to genetically morph themselves back into who they were. And having thicker bottoms, like thicker thighs, that generally is connected, or more blubber, because most of the water beings are bulky. They have blubber to keep them warm in the waterways. That's connected to the water. And also for hair, you know, they always have the Little Mermaid with red, straight hair. That isn't science. Hair that isn't porous, that doesn't collect water, that's non-porous, that's actually more cohesive to be in the waterways, like a beaver, where water isn't pulled in, it kind of protects your scalp. So if I thought of a true mermaid, she would have, and I have a picture of one that someone sent me from Canada that they came across, and it was a dark skin, brown skin, because most mermaids are very dark melanated, and it had light hair because it was getting scorched by the sun, but it would have the curly, beautiful, coily hair because it's non-porous, because it can be in the water. So if you have dreams of being in the water, breathing underwater, that's definitely a detail that you're connected to the mer family. And you should try to reconnect with that by going into the beach and speaking to your ancestors in the waterways. They try to deter a lot of these genetic groups from going there, because once you have that connection that's synced to them, you just will, everything will change in your lives. You know, you'll become healthier, you'll be more connected, you'll have better interface in this realm. Yeah.
Somebody asked, and I asked this question before, why are black